back. It's day 4, Tuesday the 12th of July, here at the FENS Forum 2022 in the amazing Paris Conference Centre at the Porte de Versailles. And I think there's clearly, even though people's enthusiasm is undiminished for the event, you can see that it's taking the toll on people's bodies. The sleep deprivation is cutting in. This is a good link to introduce my first guest this morning. I'm going to get her to introduce herself.
Yes, thank you. I'm Tazia Asakawa, the Executive Director of FENS.
There was one event which I know happened last night, which I didn't go to and you did, which is called Jump the Fence. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, Jump the Fence has really organized each FENS forum to provide a big social party for our students and participants. Whoever wants to come can come, depending on the capacity of the venue. But it's really just to create a fun, social, positive event that everybody can join and enjoy outside of the scientific program.
It's essentially a networking event.
It's essentially a party event.
Tazia, you are part of this big army of people who are kind of behind the scenes making this event happen. I mean, there's just under 8,000 people, I think, officially registered for FENS, a vast majority of whom were able to make it. But behind the scenes, in all kinds of ways, there are people working, aren't there, to make this event happen?
Yes, there are. And I've been to every FENS forum since Milano in Italy years ago as an attendee. And now, as executive director on the other side, it's a completely different experience. And behind the scenes, there's so much activity that is put into making such an event a success. And we have to work with so many different people on so many different levels, including FENS leadership, our PCO, our professional congress organizer, Kenneth, as well as our administrative team, which is very small. It's only 14 people. And coordinating all of that, making sure that almost 8,000 people are having a successful and productive event is quite challenging.
Give us some examples of the kinds of things that are going on behind the scenes that conference attendees hopefully don't know anything about.
Yes, that's an interesting question. Some people have had to go to the hospital, not because of COVID, but for some other reasons. So we've had to take care of health issues. There are lots of people who are coming down with COVID who haven't been able to come here, our speakers, and we've had to arrange the Zoom connections for them. We really wanted to have this as a completely in-person experience, but COVID is proving that we can't do this, and so we've had to adapt really on the ground and provide for Zoom connections and interaction with the audience. So for our plenary lectures and special lectures, as well as some symposia speakers. So this has been challenging, but it's also been extremely important because this is a core feature of our forum, and so we need to adapt quickly.
I'm guessing that one of the things that happens is that speakers start to panic because they can't remember where they're supposed to be or they can't find the room. Who deals with that?
It's really the FENS administrative team at our booth. So that's Louise Aupetit, who is our communications manager. It's also Marion Hall, who's our meetings coordinator. She's actually coordinating all of the volunteers that you see at the forum as well. And Kenneth, our strategic on-the-ground operational team. And they're all there to help everybody. Oh, and something else I want to add, a key person on our team who has supported us all throughout the event is our forum manager, Imbar Caspi.
When this is all over, what will make this a successful event from your point of view?
I think everybody who has been able to make connections, to share their research, to interact with top scientists as well as other student researchers who are showing their work for the first time, I think that will really show that this has been a successful post-COVID event.
I know, Taja, you'd really like to mention the team by name. So I'm just going to give you the chance to do that.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate the FENS administrative team so much, and they are really the engine behind this forum. So I'd like to give a special thanks to Birgit Kraus, who's our Finance and Administration Manager, Anya Machnio, our Administrative Assistant, Anastasia Belova, our Advocacy Assistant, Louise Aupetit, our Communications and Community Outreach Manager, Daniel Jamo, our Communications Manager, another one, Victoria Bejarero, our Communications Officer, Michael Evans, our Program Manager, Ines Oliveira, our Project Assistant, Marian Hall, our Meetings Coordinator, Andrea Marginian, our Program Officer, Mathilde Mon, ALBA Project and Network Manager, Kirtana Iyer, our ALBA Grants and Outreach Manager, as well as Imbar Caspi, our Friends Forum Manager. Thank you to all of them for their amazing work.
And thank you, Tasha. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Christian Lucia is Professor of Neurology and Neuroscience at the University of Geneva. He gave a talk today at the forum. He studies the synaptic basis of motivated behavior in drug addiction. And we asked him some days before the forum from his home in Switzerland, what led him to this topic.
So as a postdoc, I was studying synaptic transmission in the hippocampus. And particularly, I was interested in synaptic plasticity, long-term potentiation, and long-term depression. And when I finished my postdoc, I realized that this would be very interesting to be studied in the context of drug addiction. Because what was clear for me at the beginning is that dopamine has a modulatory role on synaptic plasticity of glutamate transmission. So that was sort of the premise with which we started the work in my lab now more than 20 years ago. So my talk at FENS is going to be in the context of this Schaller Award that I receive. And so I'm going to give an overview of what we have been doing over the last 20 years. And obviously, because it's only a limited time, I'm just going to go give some teasers about some of my work. And I have divided my talk into 4 chapters, and I will give a teaser for each of these chapters. One of the big questions that we need to address in the field of the neurobiology of addiction is to understand the molecular underpinnings of individual vulnerability. It's a clinical reality that if people take drugs, a majority, and that's true even for very addictive drugs such as cocaine, a majority of people can use addictive drugs for a very long time without ever losing control. So we don't know what these people have that protects them. And conversely, we don't know what makes people vulnerable such that they actually, even after short periods of drug use, they become compulsive. And so this, I think, is one of the big questions. And I think the revolution or the answer eventually will come from an investigation of expression of the genes in those cells that matter and control the behavior. So epigenetic mechanism that express certain genes in the circuits that matter in the control of the drug use will eventually turn out to be the determinant of individual vulnerability. That's my prediction. So there's 2 things that I do when I do nothing. I use my bicycle and I take pictures with my camera. So my bicycle is what keeps me fit. And it's not only I ride my bicycle on roads in order to sort of experience the environment in which I live. So for me, this is the perfect instrument to know about the geography of my environment, whether this is where I live, whether this is where I go on a vacation, or even when I go on a meeting. So I always, whenever possible, I bring my bicycle or I rent a bicycle and I just explore the surroundings. I find that extremely rewarding to do so. And right today, with a colleague, I went cycling here in Geneva. There's a little mountain called Mount Salève, and it was a very nice climb, and we could see Mont Blanc. It was just fantastic. So this is one of my things that I do. The other things that I do is I'm passionate about photography. So ever since I was a teenager, I started taking pictures, and I have now a a series of pictures that I take whenever I meet with scientists. I call this the famous neuroscientists in their natural habitat. And it has become a website. So the idea is that whenever I'm invited to give a seminar, at the end of the discussion, I ask permission to take a portrait photograph. And these photographs then go into on a website with the goal to show how people are in their natural environment. And I think that's also very nice to have, to see your colleagues in under these circumstances. And it is, for me, also an instrument to show back home, my lab, whom I met with, so you can put the face to the name of the publications. So I have taken many, many pictures. And one that certainly has marked me recently is that I had the opportunity to take pictures of Eric Kandel shortly after he announced that he, at the tender age of 93, is actually going to retire from his lab. So I built a little studio in his office and took pictures of him under the supervision of his wife, Denise, but it was a really good experience. And these photographs are also now on my website. My advice for people who start out in science is to simply follow their curiosity. I think that's the most important thing. Obviously, you have to put this into the context of what is possible and how to wisely adapt given the specific requirements in the system that people are in. But eventually what it comes down to is that you have to be fascinated, you have to be passionate about what you do. And if you cannot find that, it's going to be very difficult, no matter how good the overall conditions are.
Earlier on today, I met up with Laura Andre, developmental scientist based at King's College London. She's chair of the ALBA network, and she explained to me all about the work of ALBA.
The ALBA network was founded a few years ago by Carmen Sandy, who was then the president of FENS, and she's Spanish. And so she chose the name ALBA because in Spanish that means sunrise. And so the hope was that this would represent a kind of a new dawn of improvements in equity and diversity. And so what the ALBA network does is it's committed to improving equity, diversity and inclusion in the brain sciences. And we very much see it as a network. So we have members, we have now well over 1,000 members from, I think, pretty much almost every country in the globe. And so we kind of try and listen to our membership and run activities and events and create resources for our members in the hope of improving equity and diversity.
So I saw an event the other evening, which was a prize giving, and a really wonderful recipient of that. But apart from prize givings and so on, what else do you do?
Okay, so I should first of all mention that the prizes are really great because I think they really help to increase awareness of some of the fantastic things that are going on in this space, and just sort of give a bit of recognition to people who are working really hard and achieving incredible things, usually for free and in their spare time, and hopefully inspire other people to do similarly. So what you saw yesterday was the ALBA FK&E Diversity Prize. So we do things with different partners, and in that particular case, we work together to choose that particular prize. And I should say that we've actually got another prize tomorrow, which is the ALBA Elsevier Award. And the idea there is to give a platform to people who are doing fantastic neuroscience, but in countries where they don't always get the same opportunities to speak about their science at big international conferences like this one. And so there's going to be 2 awardees tomorrow, which I think will be fantastic. But apart from that, we've got a ton of other events going on at the forum, as well as other things we do, which I can mention. But just here at FENS, we've had a couple of events already. So on the first day, we had the Colours of the Rainbow event, which was a really amazing session where neuroscientists from across the world gave a short account of their kind of journey through neuroscience and how they got there and the challenges they faced. And then there was a discussion about, the issues that people do face and how we can improve those. There was a session yesterday, which was a partner event between the World Women in Neuroscience, EBRO and us, which was a mentoring circle. Because obviously mentorship is a very important issue and is something that we really want to try and promote and help people to set up mentorship networks. We've got a social event this evening where, again, we're a network. We really want members to be able to meet, especially in person now. It's very exciting. And, discuss ideas and what they would like to see happen. And then I should say we've also got at the FENS booth, we've got our own Alba booth with a wishing tree, which... it might sound a bit gimmicky, but I think it's been awesome. So at the beginning of the conference, we had quite a large tree with just entirely bare branches. And what we're doing is we're inviting people to write down on a little piece of coloured card in the Alba colours their wish for what they would like to see in equity and diversity. And as the conference has gone on, our bare branch tree has been flowering increasingly profusely with everyone's wishes. And so at the end of the forum, we're going to take them all down and look at all of them and see, what would people like to see happen in this space and, how can we help achieve that? So if you Google Alba Network, you'll get to our website, and we have all the information about Alba on the website, what we do, the events that we run during the year at many different meetings, many resources that are available to the community. And there's a nice big button that you can click on that says become a member. It's free. It's extremely fast. It takes no more than a minute or two to fill in the basic form. And then you'll be getting emails and communications about all the things that we're doing. And if you want to join in and volunteer, then we'd love to have you.
I got to do my own event today, or rather I chaired a special event to hear practical advice from 4 science communicators, all very accomplished in their scientific fields and in the world of science communication. They were Hannah Critchlow, Elodie Chabrol, John Cryan and Caitlin van der Velde. And before the event, I got to talk to Caitlin. She's the CEO of Stellite Communications. She and her team work with scientists and their organisations on how to tell their stories.
Through Stellate and with my team, as I mentioned, we work with scientists on how to tell their stories. And we really take it from a personal branding perspective and then all the way to how do you get your science out into the world, whether it's through social media or media coverage, press releases, things like that. So we cover that whole spectrum through owned content to earned content. And so I'm hoping to talk a little bit more about what that process is like and then how to ground that in your personal brand.
A lot of people think that communicating as a scientist is a really important thing to do, but they can't find the time for it. There's not probably any money to cover it. What do you say to people who struggle with that, who just say, well, I'd like to do it, but it's not really possible?
Yeah, I think when people ask me that or tell me that they don't have the time, I say, you already do have the time. Scientists do this already. They do science communication through their manuscripts, their grants, and it doesn't take a lot of extra time to then try to distill that down into, let's say, a tweet or a podcast. So I think it's just finding the right avenue, and that can take, some assistance or some, kind of searching for the right channel. But it doesn't take that much more time. But to be fair, that's also why I started Stellate, because that is the support that we provide to the scientists who want to do these things, but just may not have the time or the resources.
And the idea of branding is pretty scary, isn't it, for some people? They just, no. I'm a scientist. I don't do branding.
But they do branding. If you have your own lab, it is always, the Vanderweel lab or the Love lab. So it already is your brand. It is the new paper that came out of the Love lab. So you already have this brand, and whether scientists like to acknowledge it or not, they already engage in, curating a personal brand, but some do it better than others and some do it more haphazardly. So it's about finding who you are, what's within your ecosystem, and then what tiny piece of that you want to communicate to the public. And it doesn't have to be everything who you are, but it's the important pieces. And so we help scientists do that, and I think it's an essential piece. It's how people know who you are and what your science is. And scientists already, have their niche fields. They're already thought leaders in some way. It's just figuring out, again, the right channels and avenues to express that.
Now, there are numerous societies, of course, that meet in and around the FENS Forum. Fernando de Castro is a staff scientist at the Cajal Institute and current president of the History Committee of FENS. So I asked him about the work of the committee.
We are interested in promoting the history of neuroscience, which are our roots in the current research, and especially we are interested in the historical people that paved modern neuroscience in the different countries, especially in Europe, of course, and within FENS. And in each of the FENS Forum, we try to emphasize the contributions from the local host society, in this case, France.
And of course, there are some giant figures in neuroscience. You mentioned Cajal already.
Well, I think that Cajal is the founder of the modern neuroscience and the conception of the basis of individuality of neurons, the connection, the synaptic connections, and many other questions, the direction of fluxes. And from Cajal, we work a lot in Spain, of course, but there are some other figures that attack neuroscientific problems from different ways. For example, in France, it is a giant figure, that of Charcot, that was one of the first neurologists, clinical neurologists, and the contribution of Charcot and his school to describe many of the neurological diseases that we know today and we are investigating today is incredible.
What kind of a physical presence does the History Committee have here? I mean, is there a place where, if people are interested in knowing more, they can come to you?
We have a history corner where some posters are presented here. We show normally those grants that have been granted by FENS to do some online research projects. And also we normally encourage the local production of, in this case, French contributions to the history of neuroscience for local students, etc. And we have also a social event that will be will happen.
I'm going to ask you that question. And I know that this evening there's a really important event happening, isn't there? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Normally we celebrate a special event in a historical place, and in this case we have chosen the Hôpital Saint-Louis, that is a very historical hospital in Paris, close to the Place de la République, where they have the Musée de Moulage, so it's a museum where they host or they show different wax models, etc., related to medicine in general. And we are fully booked, but maybe we will have some more extra places. And we are emphasizing the role of French neuroscience and Paris neuroscience, briefly, with a couple of dynamic talks. And then we also will discuss maybe the main goal of our committee for the moment, that is the Global Brain Museum project. That is very interesting for the future, and we are very enthusiastic about this.
Fernando, thank you very much for talking to us. Enjoy the rest of the forum.
Thank you very much, Malcolm, and I hope I'll see you in the special event of History of Neuroscience.
I'm going to try very hard to be there. Thank you. Well, that's it for today, the penultimate day of the FENS Forum 22 from Pavilion 7 at the Paris Convention Centre. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and I look forward to your company tomorrow. Have yourselves a very good evening.
This podcast was presented by Malcolm Love with some interviews by Daniela Dominguez, Pranav Chintamani Joshi, and Armel Rancillac. It was produced for the FENS Forum 2022 by Solid Gold Hats.